Ready or not, here we go. Oh, hey, Paul.
This is the place to do it.
Hey, John Bartell here. If you are looking for a big adventure, California's got some of the biggest attractions around. You know, I've spent years traveling the state looking for history, landmarks, and attractions. So I want to take you to some of my favorite larger-than-life areas in the state. We're going to start off on the Mendocino coast with a little trip up California's tallest lighthouse, the Point Arena Lighthouse. To warn the ships of shallow rocks below, they needed a really tall lighthouse, and that's what you'll find at Point Arena.
It is actually the tallest lighthouse on the West Coast. It's 115 feet from the base to the top of the tower. It's about 155 feet from the mean low tide line.
Mark Hancock is the lighthouse keeper at Point Arena, and he gives tours of the 175-step spiral staircase to the top of the tower. Once at the top, you get a spectacular view of the rugged coast, and if you're lucky,
Different every day. Yeah, there we go.
You might just see some migrating whales flashing their fins.
Pretty much all year round we see some sort of whale. The primary is the grays.
Also from the top, you'll see Arena Rock, which is a big reason why the lighthouse was built.
It is the size of a football field and it's only 6 feet deep. And it's been responsible for over 100 shipwrecks since they started keeping track in the 1800s.
Inside the Lighthouse Museum, you can see relics from the past, like the old kerosene-powered lamp.
And it put out 16,000 lumens, and with that light source, it cast a beam that was visible 21.5 miles out to sea.
If you find that you really like the lighthouse keeper's lifestyle, you can rent out and spend the night in the old keeper's quarters. Luckily for visitors, an electric light now replaces the old kerosene lamp, which had to be filled at the top of the tower.
And about every 4 hours, they would have to carry a 5-gallon bucket of kerosene with them too, to keep the reservoir full, to keep the light going.
In California's Eastern Sierra, the Owens Valley is known for its vast open skies, making it the perfect home for one of the world's largest university-run radio observatories. Around here, locals call it Big Ears. I know what you're probably thinking. This looks like a secret government communication base, and you might think that these satellites are spying on someone or maybe even talking to aliens. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but...
We are not looking for aliens, as far as I know. If they come knocking on the front door, we're not going to say no. So.
Welcome to the Owens Valley Radio Observatory, located just outside of Bishop, California, in the little town of Big Pine.
In Bishop, it's just referred to as the ears, the big ears.
Locals call it Big Ears because they think researchers like Travis Powell are listening for something. But once again, I'm gonna have to disappoint.
No, we're not listening. We never put on headphones and actually listen to what the telescope picks up.
So what exactly are these giant dishes doing?
Our main project going on right now, COMAP, which stands for the Carbon Monoxide Mapping Array Pathfinder.
That's a big word
Big
there.
word, yeah.
CO mapping is actually just one of several projects going on here at Big Ears. The Owens Valley Radio Observatory is one of the largest university-operated radio observatories in the world. And the radio telescope that Travis is using is sort of like a carbon monoxide time machine.
By looking at carbon monoxide at different times and places in the universe, we can get an idea of how star formation and galaxy formation occurred at those times.
A lot of what goes on here is highly technical and not very visual. These telescope dishes shoot and record radio waves that are processed through complex computers, then converted into data that only scientists can read. You're not going to be able to pick this up at Best Buy or anything.
Definitely not, no.
The telescopes were built in the Owens Valley because they have clear skies and it's far from radio electrical interference. Essentially, it's in the middle of nowhere.
This observatory is in a high, dry environment to avoid that atmosphere as much as possible.
The telescopes come in all shapes and sizes and search all sorts of things. This 40-meter dish studies black holes, these medium dishes locate fast radio bursts, and these coat hanger-looking things search for redshifts. Whatever whatever that is. Could we use some of the data gathered here for future, like, space travel, or?
Probably not.
I'm gonna be honest, a lot of what's done here is way over my head. But the good news is, the Radio Observatory is open to the public. And if you take a tour, you can ask as many questions as you want.
So it looks at 2,500 blazars and active galactic nuclei over the course of a week. It looks at that one, a couple thousand of these.
Did you just make that word up there?
No.
You know what they say about big shoes? Big feet, of course. And if you have big shoe repairs, head over to the Big Shoe in Bakersfield. Well, it's not the biggest attraction in Bakersfield, but it's pretty hard to miss. Located at the corner of Chester Avenue and 10th in Bakersfield is the Big Shoe Shoe Repair.
I'm inside of the stinky shoe.
A stinky.
That's what the kids says when they come.
There's all sorts of things you can say about a big shoe, but when you walk into Felipe Torres' shop, you'll be met with a big personality.
Shoe repairman, shoe doctor, whatever they want to call me.
With an interior of just 370 square feet, the Big Shoe is actually not a big shoe shop, according to Felipe, and that leads to some storage issues. Some may say this is not very organized. What would you say? Built by Chester Deschwadden in 1947, the Big Shoe was a family business until Chester's son Donald died in 1992. The shoe sat vacant for more than a decade until Felipe, for a lack of better terms, stepped in.
Because I was without a job. And this place was for rent.
Felipe can pretty much fix any shoe he wants, except for one.
When these shoes start falling apart, who's gonna repair it? I wish it could be me because I repair shoes, but the building, not me.
Let's just hope that day never comes. California's redwoods are the tallest trees on Earth. So big that you can actually drive a car through them. And one of the best places to experience this is at the Chandelier Drive-Thru tree, a must-see stop when traveling through Northern California. Among the redwoods within Mendocino County's Avenue of the Giants, there's a turnoff on Highway 101 near Leggett. That turnoff will lead you to a privately owned and protected grove of trees, and at the center of it all is this, a redwood so big you can drive a car through it. You're definitely gonna want to pull your mirrors in before going through. Welcome to Underwood Park, home of the Chandelier tree, one of just 3 living redwood trees that you can drive a car through. That is a tight squeeze. You may be asking yourself, how did this giant hole end up in this giant tree? Lucky for us, Pam Linder knows the answer.
The story I was told was a lot of bottles of beer and a few jugs of moonshine, and they got the job done.
I guess labor laws are a little different at Underwood Park. Anyways, Pam says that the drive-thru tree is owned by the Underwood family, who bought the land back in 1922 as a tourist attraction.
In 1922, it had a different drive-thru tree on the property called the Coolidge tree. That one had a bad crack in it. They didn't trust it. They took that one down.
Not long after Prohibition ended, the Underwoods grabbed that liquor that Pam was talking about and started tunneling through the Chandelier tree in 1937.
In the 30s, they charged $0.25 for cars to go through.
The price has gone up to $10 since then, and so has the size of cars.
I don't know if you're gonna make it.
Pam says there is one rule when you enter the park. Drive through the tree at your own risk. And it's not uncommon for oversized vehicles to overestimate the size of the hole.
The Oscar Mayer Wienerville Mobile came through the park. That was pretty cool.
Didn't go through though.
It did not go through.
They call it the Chandelier tree because someone thought it looked like an upside down chandelier. From the ground to its top, the tree is 315 feet tall. Its trunk is 21 feet in diameter, and it's estimated to be 2,400 years old. And yep, it sees a lot of traffic.
500 plus on our busiest times.
If you don't want to get stuck in tree traffic, pull over and explore the 220-acre park and the ever-growing collection of chainsaw art. Just watch out for Sasquatch. Well, I hope you're not afraid of heights because we're headed to the highest state park in California, and the only way to get there is to catch a ride on the Palm Springs Tramway, the largest rotating tram in the world. When the desert heat gets too hot in Palm Springs, it's not uncommon for people to take refuge on top of Mount San Jacinto State Park, where temperatures are often 30 to 40 degrees cooler. But one of the only ways to get there is to ride the world's largest rotating tram.
You just better hope you're not afraid of heights.
This is the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway, your fast-track ticket to visiting California's highest state park.
And we go through 5 climatic zones all the way up to Alpine, where the mountain station is at 8,516 feet.
The 12-minute tram ride takes you up Chino Canyon, where you'll glide by rocky cliffs and fast-moving water. Thanks to the rotating floor, passengers get a 360-degree view of the mountains and the Coachella Valley. The view is spectacular, but tram spokesperson Greg Purdy says it's also an engineering marvel that dates back to the Depression era.
Dubbed Crocker's Folly, because there's a lot of folks that didn't think it would happen.
Francis Crocker was an electrical engineer, and on a hot, sweaty day back in 1935, he got the idea to build a tram on the snowy peak of Mount San Jacinto. His dream would take him decades, not only to convince the state, but to overcome war rations and various political roadblocks. But finally, in 1960, the project took off, literally.
It was all built with helicopters and tens of thousands of trips.
Francis Crocker's tram was nicknamed the eighth wonder of the world. Without roads, the project took more than 23,000 helicopter flights and required workers to sleep on the mountain. But in 1963, the tram opened and not only attracted thousands of riders, but a long list of movies and TV shows.
Filmmakers, TV shows really liked us through the years, all the way back to Mannix and Mission Impossible, up to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. The Bachelorette was here a year or so ago.
The tram itself often catches Hollywood's focus, but the true destination for tourists is Mount San Jacinto State Park.
Why would anyone want to make a state park up here?
Well, why not?
In all fairness, it does not always snow this bad on the mountain. I just happened to come during a snowstorm.
How far did you say this was?
It's about 0.2 miles.
Lucky for me, state park interpreter Nick Ardino was able to show me around.
This is effectively the one and only way down into the state park wilderness.
Although winter really is a great time to visit the mountain, I wanted to show you what it looks like in the summer. The snow that falls here provides water for the forest of Jeffrey pine trees and all the animals that live up here.
We're transported into what we call a biological island in the sky.
Snow is a pretty special thing in the Palm Springs area. You have to remember, at the bottom of the tram is a hot, arid desert. Nick says when it does snow, views on the park's live webcam increase dramatically, and everyone is watching this picnic table.
That is a very, very famous picnic table. Don't touch it.
Oh,
don't move it.
don't touch it.
Don't even think about it.
Turns out the picnic table is sort of a snow gauge for people who want to go sledding. Had it not been for Francis Crocker, the hot and sweaty engineer, visitors in this area may not have had the opportunity to cool down or experience a snowstorm in the deserts of Palm Springs.
We kind of have a running joke up here with Mount San Jacinto. If you don't like the weather or the views, just wait a couple minutes and they'll change like that.
Hey, John Bartell here. We're checking out some of the biggest attractions in California. You know, one of my most memorable trips took me to the top of California's tallest road. Buckle up for this one, because we're heading to White Mountain Peak in Mono County. 14,200 feet. That's the summit of White Mountain. It's also the end of California's highest drivable road. From the rocky parking lot, you're exactly 253 feet below Mount Whitney, the tallest mountain in California and the lower 48 states. On a clear day, you can see Death Valley to the south and Yosemite National Park to the north. But getting to the end of California's highest road is no easy task.
It's it's so unmaintained and awful and bouncy and ugh.
The nearest paved road is behind a lock gate 7 miles from the summit. The rugged landscape is home to bighorn sheep, and around every steep switchback, there's a chance fallen rocks are in your way.
You can get head rush.
Yeah?
Oh yeah.
You feel a little loopy here, don't you?
Yeah.
Steve DeVanzo and his dog Sugar are with the University of California White Mountain Research Center, and he's one of the few people actually permitted to drive a vehicle to the summit. And that loopiness that I'm feeling is actually the beginning symptoms of what could turn into altitude sickness.
Yeah, it's just hypoxia. The percentage of oxygen is the same in the air, but there's less atmosphere, so you're actually taking in less oxygen.
Compared to standing at sea level, there is 42% less breathable air on top of White Mountain Peak. Hypoxia affects people in many different ways, and hypoxia is actually one of the main reasons that this road exists. What were they doing up here?
They were doing human physiology studies on subjects, on human subjects.
Subjects were required to spend 20 days, restricted to the very top of the mountain.
In 1948, White Mountain Peak was a Navy research facility, but then in the 1950s, the University of California took it over and built several high-altitude testing laboratories, including this one, the Summit Hut at the top of White Mountain. Oh, yeah, the amenities, they're limited here. Human testing at the White Mountain Research Center has helped scientists get baseline data for all sorts of research. Research used in high-altitude flights and the early space race, but the focus has always been on understanding hypoxia and the severity of altitude sickness.
It happens a lot and people die. It's like your brain swells up in your head or your lungs fill with fluids, and if you can't get them out in a certain amount of time, they're basically dead.
About 1,500 feet below the Summit Hut, modern hypoxia studies regularly take place at the Backroads station. Scientists from all over the world come here to gather baseline data that can be used in medical treatments for all sorts of illnesses.
So there's certain conditions like COPD and COVID that manifest as hypoxia. So when we do research up here, we can look at a healthy human model and try to figure out the normal way people respond to hypoxia.
Although university researchers are the only ones allowed to drive up California's highest road, it's perfectly fine for anyone to walk the 7 miles to the summit. And for her 69th birthday, Sarah Warmbrot did a little hypoxia research of her own.
It wasn't bad.
Not too bad.
I mean, it really wasn't. You just keep going, take a few breaks for water, and just keep moving.
And mountain biker Casey Shefstein got a different result. How was your bike ride up here?
It's a lot of walking for a bike ride.
Oh. Hypoxia affects humans in many different ways, and that's why it's so difficult to study. But thanks to this long, bumpy road, scientists have a pathway to new remedies. The Mojave Desert is known for its scorching temperatures, and in the little town of Baker, they believe hot weather calls for a really big thermometer. Standing tall as a local landmark, it's a must-see road trip attraction. Centered between Death Valley and the Mojave National Preserve, Baker, California used to be a railroad station serving mining companies. Today, it's a gas station pit stop for heat-seeking travelers and home to the world's tallest thermometer. World's tallest thermometer. How tall are we talking?
134 feet up.
That's not an arbitrary height. Gabby's the shop liaison and says the 134-foot tall thermometer is a tribute to the hottest temperature recorded in Death Valley, 134 degrees Fahrenheit.
Middle of summer, you can cook an egg out here.
The massive thermometer was the brainchild of Willis and Barbara Heron, local business owners who spent $750,000 to construct this heat reader.
Did Mr. and Mrs. Heron just like temperature changes, or?
I think he just liked the town, and he thought this would be a good spot for it.
Technically, this is the second tallest thermometer. Shortly after the first thermometer was constructed in 1991, high winds blew it over. A newer, stronger, tallest thermometer was built the following year. Since then, it's attracted visitors from all over the world.
As crazy it's going to sound, a lot of people want to experience that heat.
Well, if one tourist attraction wasn't enough, just down the road is Alien Jerky, a massive UFO-shaped souvenir shop loaded with dry meats. The charm of a covered wooden bridge is a rare sight these days, and in the little town of Knights Ferry, you'll find one. Not just any bridge, though. It's the longest covered bridge in the West, a true hidden gem worth exploring. Spanning 330 feet over the Stanislaus River is the longest covered bridge west of the Mississippi.
John Bartell here, making a little pit stop at the Knights Ferry Covered Bridge.
It may not look like much, but the Stanislaus River was once a huge hurdle for early gold miners trying to get from the port of Stockton to the Sierra foothill town of Sonora. But for entrepreneur Dr. William Knight, this very riverbank was a great place to start a trading post, which became known as Knight's Ferry.
When William Knight founded the town, originally there was a ferry that would go across the Stanislaus River.
Park Ranger Frankie Bauer says Dr. Knight made loads of money, and that's because the nearest crossing would cost miners several days' travel just to get over the tough terrain.
It was a good way to make money because people didn't have another choice.
When Dr. Knight founded the town in 1849, business was good. There was even talks about building a bridge, but unfortunately for Dr. Knight, he was murdered that very same year and would never see the bridge. His death, however, didn't stop a man by the name of David Locke from capitalizing on the location.
David Locke came through. He decided that a covered bridge was needed to replace the ferry.
The first bridge built in Knight's Ferry was washed out in a flood. The second, however, is still standing today.
These look like some old timbers here.
Yes, a lot of these beams are actually the original wood.
Right next to the bridge, you can check out the ruins of David Locke's old flour mill, which later became a hydroelectric plant. Or you can hike the many trails, which will lead you to swimming holes, fishing spots, or this Native American acorn grinding rock.
They'd take a grinding stone, they would grind inside the rock to make a meal. That way they could turn it into a flour.
Hey, John Bartell here. We're checking out some of the biggest travel destinations in California. You're gonna wanna put on your swimming suit for this next one because we're heading to McSwain in Mariposa County to check out California's largest inflatable water park. There's an old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I have learned that I am not tough, and I am not going, at least not very far. If you ever need a reminder on how out of shape you are, come here to Lake McSwain in Mariposa County.
We are now North America's largest floating inflatable water park. It's like American Ninja Warrior meets Wipeout.
This is Splash and Dash. It's not a bouncy house or a blow-up pool toy. This is a 125,000 square foot vinyl obstacle course. And unlike American Ninja Warrior, you don't need any special skills to participate, although it would help.
This one kind of gives you obstacle, 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 then a little runway. So it's more challenging this year to keep our guests on their toes.
Kind of like an inflatable Lego set, Mary Gathman, Kent, and her team add on different obstacles every year. This summer's edition was Big Boy, a 3-story tower with a blob at the bottom. What's a blob, you ask? The mechanics of a blob aren't complicated. If you've ever launched your younger sibling on a half-deflated air mattress, you know how it works. But if you want more specifics, ask blob lifeguard Caleb Borba.
On the first jump, we put a little bit too much air in it, so I didn't get too high. But when we finally perfected it, I probably got like 10, 15 feet up, just boom, smack.
It's new additions to the park that keep visitors coming back. Visitors like pop singer Pink.
She posted it on her Instagram, and I have been slammed with messages and inquiries and reporters ever since because it's, you know, she was a great person.
Whether you're a toddler full of energy or an out-of-shape grown-up, the bouncy obstacle course is bound to put a smile on your face.
It's a little chilly.
That is, until you fall in the water.
It is a freshwater lake, so it is cold, fed by the snowpack up at Yosemite.
Well, nobody asked the Meisner family to build the world's tallest sewing needle, but they did it anyways. This quirky Sacramento roadside attraction really sticks out for everyone driving by. The internet calls this the world's largest or longest sewing needle, but this is the reaction I got from Jim Meisner, the owner of the needle.
Okay.
Okay, did you even know that?
I didn't know that, but I'd go along with that.
The giant needle has kind of a funny story.
My father moved us here from Los Angeles in 1958.
When Meisner Sewing first started in Sacramento, Jim's dad, Bill, sold industrial sewing machines and parts out of their home. Eventually, the business grew, and when Jim got older, he took over the family business and expanded.
And we moved to this location in 1982, and it's a 20,000 square foot building.
The sign from the previous business was on top of the metal sign pole.
And it said add art, and it had light bulbs around the sign, and the light bulbs would blink.
The city of Sacramento told Jim that he had to replace the entire pole if he wanted a new sign. That was gonna be a little expensive. Luckily though, one of Jim's friends had an idea.
Over about half a glass of wine later, he goes, too bad you couldn't just turn that into a sewing needle. And I said, you know what, that's a great idea.
Jim had to do a lot of petitioning with the city, but eventually he got approval, and down came the old sign, and up went the needle point and thread. Since Jim didn't know how tall the needle was, we used our drone's altimeter to measure it. Rachel, how tall is it?
It is 82 feet.
Jim says whether it's the tallest in the world or not, the Meisner sewing needle still has a lot of meaning.
I think it just signifies our longevity. You know, we've been in Sacramento since 1958. We've been in this location since 1982. And there are really no sewing machine companies that have had that kind of longevity here in Sacramento.
Well, thanks for watching Bartell's Backroads and following me along as we check out some of California's biggest travel destinations. I hope it's inspired you to take a trip of your own. I'm John Bartell. Hope to see you on the Backroads.